Media, welcome to the toy store. I'm moderator of today's workshop, drones, quadcopters, UAVs, what to buy, safe operation. I am not an expert. I'm just here as the traffic cop. I'm going to be turning over to Tom Bolus from PAC TV in Plymouth and Ryan Weber from the Falmouth Public Schools. They're going to fill you in on plenty of information about this. You know, it is an opportunity for us and access to use some of these. Anyone using them currently? Who would like to use them? Then you're in the right place.
That's a good sign.
You're in the right place. So we will welcome your questions, of course, as we go along. But I will turn it over now to Ryan and Tom to take it away. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So hi, I'm Ryan Weber. I'm with Falmouth Community Access. I've flown for almost 2 years now, and by no means am I an expert at all, but I've learned a lot of stuff along the way. Definitely would like to share that with you guys today. Please feel free at any point, stop, ask questions, definitely, if things need clarifying, we want to try to not move on from there. And here's Tom. Do you want to say a little more about it?
Yeah, well, I'm Tom Bolus. I'm with PAC TV in Plymouth. I've been flying RC airplanes for 10, 15 years now, somewhere in that range. So not only do I fly quads, I fly fixed wing, 8 helicopters, they're too hard. So I don't fly any of them. I do a lot of, all kinds of work with it. We have 2 Phantoms on the table, which are excellent machines. The green one that's down there, yeah,
I'll be Vanna White.
that's a racing quad. Put on a pair of goggles, the camera's on the front of it. You fly it, wearing goggles, going through gates, around flags, through tunnels, so on and so forth. So that's what they call drone racing. The white one that's next to it, I suggest, and one of the big things I should suggest for everybody that doesn't have it, go out and buy something like this. It has 6-axis in it. It's more stable than flying that. Learn how to fly that before you spend big money on a regular drone. I've had people call me up and say, last I saw my drone was going out over the ocean, what do I do?
Swim.
My comment was, kiss it goodbye. It's gone.
What is that called?
It's just,
That's the Sima.
it's a Sima. I've got the box here if you want to take down.
X5C it says on it, yeah.
It's an excellent trainer. It does have a camera in it, so you can take pictures with it, but it doesn't have a gimbal on the front of the camera like these do to keep the camera level. But it's an excellent machine to learn to fly, and I suggest everybody flies. The little one on the end, we call them whoops.
So cute.
I fly that in the house all the time. I chase the dog around the house. So, it's got prop protectors on it, and even if it didn't at full power, you can stick your finger in it and it would stop it. But, and it does have a camera on the front, and you can wear the goggles. So you can fly around the house looking, you can fly through the living room being in the kitchen and not even see that, so.
Probably hear it though.
Yeah, it's not too noisy, but you can hear it, so.
All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? So first thing, what defines a UAV? There's some various definitions we can talk about, and kind of some of the nomenclature about how we name these. How we're going to use UAVs to tell your story. Definitely, you guys are all community access, how best you can utilize them. What should you look for if you were going to buy potentially one of these? There's a lot of things and considerations to keep in mind for that. What are you going to do to actually fly them legally and not have problems down the road? And then what are some of the practical, ethical concerns? How do you actually fly them in the real world, really? This is kind of the beginning and end of that. So, what's a drone? Tom, can I put you on the spot for a second?
Sure.
So what is a drone?
A drone is an aircraft the military uses to bomb people. These are toys.
So this is not a drone. These not drones.
Everybody calls them drones because the news media called it a drone and that stuck.
But,
But in the real world, they're unmanned, so they can be classified as a drone.
so the difference between those, drone flies autonomously, doesn't require human interaction necessarily. A lot of them have weapons like these, so this is a drone, this is the Predator Q something or other, I don't know. I would not want one of these, I would be scared to fly it honestly too. Also, drone, not a flying drone, but you guys may have seen that before. Also a drone, not quite a drone because it's manned right now. You guys are BoJack Horseman fans. All right, so what we like to refer to these as UAVs or UAS. UAV is unmanned aerial vehicle. UAS is unmanned aerial system. That means basically both of these, the controller as well as the actual drone itself. So combined, they're the system. We refer to these as UAVs. And hopefully I won't slip and call it anything else. I know Tom won't, for sure. So there's a lot of different kinds of UAVs out there. We have these Phantom 4s here, and these are quadricopters, quad meaning 4, so they have 4 propeller blades. Pretty straightforward, right? There's other ones out there that are a little bit more robust. So we have hexacopters. So the Matrice, which I would love to have, which is more of a film camera, is 6-bladed. You can also get super nuts, and this was my fun that I saw recently. This is a hexadecacopter. It is a 16-bladed. If you guys ever see Casey Neistat, who does really famous, or really great aerial vehicles video, they actually flew him up. This was powerful enough to actually lift him up in the shots that they were doing. They were doing kind of this Christmas special, which was pretty cool. So basically, whatever prefix you have, add to copter, and that is what you can call it, quadcopter, for all that stuff. So what do we use these things for? You guys may be thinking about it just for your stations, for using it for video, for B-roll, but there's a lot of other uses as well. Tom, you do some of these, right? Like the inspection?
Yes, yep.
So, inspection and monitoring, going out to a radio tower, seeing if something's wrong with it. You don't have to climb it yourself, you could go and fly a drone up, help out doing that way. Surveying and mapping. Definitely, I've talked to my fire station, they really like the fact that I have the drone because they like to go and take aerial maps of our coastline. So if there's ever any time when there's flooding, I can take it out later, and they said that would actually help them out to try to get FEMA money, so they can actually compare before and after shots pretty easily. They have bigger drones they can actually use for pesticide application. You can map stuff out in terms of GPS, in terms of where the crops are. There's this whole industry that's getting started up around these, that now that it's becoming a lot more commonplace, people can actually use these in a lot of different ways, and it's amazing, like to think even 5 years ago, this would have never been around at all, and now it's really changed the game. Like, this is potentially a real career someone could do, be working with a fire department to do search and rescue and just be on call for that. You know, you guys have heard Amazon delivery all the time, that potentially they could be doing that in the next couple of years. And even in emergencies, I don't know, have they talked to you at all about trying to use it for radio relay at some point?
No, but if we have a fire in the woods, I'll go up and go to the fire so that the fire chief can better direct the brush trucks to wherever that fire is. That's helped out immensely as far, you know, as far as that goes. Roofing inspectors, big commercial factories, they don't have to climb up and walk around. You can fly over, do a grid pattern, fly over it, give them the SD card, and away they go.
So yeah, you know, I started out thinking it was just going to be, hey, we're going to use this for B-roll, do great establishing shots, and it really morphed into something else. As soon as people around the community saw that, they were like, wow, we could use this for all sorts of things, and all of a sudden we got lots of crazy requests for it. Everybody wants a piece of it. All right, so how can a drone help tell your story? There is a lot of different things that it could do, and it looks like the Wi-Fi is not going to be happy in here. Hopefully it will work a little bit better later on. You can get these great establishing extreme long shots very easily. It is very quick and easy to be able to set up amazing looking shots and be able to set up establishing shots and just getting this really cool ability to get very high production values for things very quick and easily that way. You guys have used it pretty extensively, I assume, at your station.
Yeah, we do a documentary in the summertime, and high school kids, they come in for 2 weeks. 1 week, they're taught everything. They go out the following week and film it. And this year, they did aquaculture with oysters, and a lot of it was over the water. So I was a little reluctant to go out and film it, because now I'm out over the bay. You know, if I crash on land for some particular reason, at least I can pick it up and walk away. If it hits the water, it's gone and sunk. But one of the nice things with these is you can take and touch, after you put it in a certain mode when you're in the air, you can take and touch one spot, touch the second spot, hit the button, go, turn around and walk away, and it'll fly all by itself out to where you wanted the shot to go to, and hit the button that says home, walk away, and let it come back, and it'll land where you took off. The big thing, we're on 2.5 megahertz, gigahertz as far as the radio waves go. They can get interrupted. If you fly near power lines or something in that effect, it won't take over the drone. It won't make it do anything different. You just can't control it. And then it starts going off on its own because it doesn't see your transmitter, so it doesn't know what's happening. You can take multiples of frequencies that's not on the 2.5 gigs and multiply it by 1, 2, 10 times, and if you come out on that frequency, it can, block your signal to the drone. Oops.
Which is a very scary moment.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you just have to be careful. The one thing you remember, no matter what you get, from the smallest one to the biggest one that you've seen on there, everything has an expiration date. You're going to have it for so long, and when it goes, it goes. That goes with any kind of...
Right, especially with mechanical as well as electronics, so that definitely... Always when you put the drone up, you never know if it's coming back, so you try to plan as best you can, and you hope for the best. Definitely. I've had more than a few moments too, where I've been, oh no, I'm never going to see it again.
And the thing of it is, and the reason I say get the small one and learn how to fly it, when you're flying away from yourself, right is right, left is left. When you're coming back, left is right and right is left.
Yeah.
The controls are reversed because you're flying towards you instead of... So I do suggest if you fly out to do something in the beginning, don't turn it around and come back. Back it up. Back it up to you so that, and when you get one, even with that one, learn to get it up and hover. Go forward and back to the center, back to you, back to forward again. Go right, back to center, left, back to center. Learn the controls. Because even with these, that you can put them up, put the transmitter down and walk away. When that battery gets to the point where it knows, or something in there knows, the flight board, that you've got this much battery power and I need this much to get home, it'll come home by itself, provided there's no interruption. But if you're out there flying and you do end up doing something wrong and you're not familiar with what the controls are, you can end up losing it. I don't know about that, but this has collision avoidance in it. I can try to fly into a house and it won't go. It'll stop 6 feet from the house and I can't make it go any further. Although I have flown it through the branches in a tree, so it doesn't see that.
There's a firmware update that made it a little better recently,
Right, yeah.
as a matter of fact.
And that's one of the things with DJI, they're always constantly updating something. And if you don't update, you can't fly because it just won't let you fly.
I had that problem recently too.
Yeah, I know. Every time I want to do it.
Yeah, they like to put out updates, which is good, definitely. So, yeah, definitely, there's a lot to these drones. We're going to talk a little bit more about that for sure today as we go through. One other thing, just going back to telling the story, I thought this was really interesting. This is another Casey Neistat video. He had relatives that were down in Texas for the flood, so he actually went through and took aerial shots of where the flood was, showing exactly where it was, kind of getting good visuals about what he's describing there, which was where the water came in And of course, that's a good establishing shot for when they finally go to the shot inside to show what it then, you know, the destruction of all that stuff. So it kind of gives better context of like how far the water came in. So definitely it adds quite a bit to the story, and unfortunately their family possessions really, it's kind of a sad story. So we're going to take a quick break from us talking for a second. I have a video I'd like to share with you guys. It's from DJI. It's a little, you know, promo for them, but they actually went and they shot an entire movie. Not only just the aerial shots, but they used the camera from the drone itself to shoot the movie as well. So this is a little 6-minute movie behind the scenes that they did of the shorter, or of this longer short film that I'd like to kind of show you guys, just kind of the coolness.
The Circle is a narrative short film set in the Great Depression era. It's a father-son story about a starving artist, the father, who makes a living off of sketching street portraits of people. He is reunited with his son when he finally has the means to support him, or so he thinks he does.
Today was a very good
So here we have the father, who is a creative person who lives his life based off of creativity and artistic endeavors as opposed to monetary and materialistic endeavors. And he picks up his son and he tries to instill those values in him.
Draw a circle.
Just a circle?
Yes, with one stroke.
How big?
You'd say.
I haven't seen my father in a long time. My mother's died, and he's a really good artist. It's kind of like I find the kids and I beat them up. I know what you stole from my dad. Give it back.
Filmmaking has been tethered to the ground for so long, and we've done things relatively the same way for the last 20, 30 years. And DJI, with their equipment, with their technology, is sort of allowing filmmaking to be freed.
What's unique about this particular film shoot is that we're using new technology to really push the limits of camera language and storytelling. Every single shot in this film is shot with the Inspire 2.
It was kind of an interesting way to kind of figure out a new way to kind of shoot this spot, and I'm always up for a challenge, so I think that's kind of an interesting way to do it. We kind of figured out ways of moving the camera. We put the drone on dollies, and I have this almost like a free remote head, which is kind of an interesting way too. We've done some shots of coming down into a bed where I just tilt down and I have this lightweight remote head and just need a couple of pulleys, and kind of made this really simple shot easily. And if it had been a bigger camera, that would actually been a lot more difficult. We did a shot yesterday where we just transitioned a shot and people kind of wonder how you did it. You know, the drone's coming in for a landing.
So we made 3D printed handles, a specialty made just for this shoot, and these handles allowed an operator to catch the Inspire 2 out of the air and smoothly in the same shot transition into a normal handheld platform.
You have the operator for the bird that kind of brings it down, then you have an operator that can grab the bird, we safely turn it off, and then we kind of bring it into the shot to kind of finish it off in a way. Well, a seamlessly one orchestrated shot. You almost couldn't tell the handoff at all, even though there was, if you look from the outside, the handoff is pretty obvious, but from on camera, I feel it's pretty seamless.
It's been so exciting to see the innovative and imaginative ways Sheldon and Claudio have been using the drone, especially when it comes to interiors, and we're shooting dialogue scenes on it, which is awesome.
laws change and money disappears and buildings fall. Giotto,
There's the obvious plus side that comes with a drone in terms of the freedom of movement and the beautiful wide open landscape visuals that you get, but then you can have the consistency of that same image if you're using a drone in ways that it's not typically considered to be used.
I think we're both entitled to an ice cream.
The dynamic range on the camera, on the drone itself, and being able to shoot in lower light, and using it for both day scenes and night scenes, interiors and exteriors, to me that's something I haven't really seen before.
I hope that people who watch this short film walk away feeling empowered, seeing that the Inspire 2 was crafted to be such a set-friendly, professional cinematography tool inspired us to create this short film. We saw the Inspire 2, we saw the form factor, we saw how small the camera was and said, hey, let's tell a story with it.
If you're not working for a studio and you don't have a $40 million plus budget, you're so limited in terms of what you're able to do. And everything that DJI is putting out in the market kind of reverses that whole trend and then flips it on its head to some degree. So we're going to have young filmmakers with not a lot of money making really incredible visual pieces, and a company like DJI makes that possible.
With all this new technology, all these new features, all these new things you can do with the Inspire 2, it still serves one thing: storytelling. And I hope that talented people who watch this film go out and tell their own stories.
If you ever get a chance to see it, it's like an 11-minute film called The Circle. It's definitely something that's pretty worthwhile to watch. It's a good story. They have very professional actors in it, for sure, too. Can you guys see better without it? Yeah. All right. All right, so there's a lot of different ways to tell your stories, but let's face it, we're all gearheads at a certain point. We like toys, definitely. So what do you look for when you're trying to find a new toy to play with? Quite a few things, as a matter of fact. So in various configurations, we'll talk about the different drones that are out there, but these are some of the things you really kind of want to talk about. So the gimbal is this front part here. If my drone was on, I could show you, but basically it keeps the camera level and stable. So if the camera's being shaken or by wind, it keeps the camera stable and level so that the shot itself is very smooth, okay? Resolution, sensor size obviously becomes important because at the end of the day, these are still cameras. You guys know when you're going out and finding a camera, a bigger sensor is better. So trying to find something that has a larger sensor means it's more sensitive, and then you're looking at, 1080 versus 2K or 4K. There's 8K now too, right? Yeah. I don't know if there are any drones that have 8K.
I don't know of anybody that's got it. But.
Probably there's one out there. I don't know one. So have that. If the drone itself pans and tilts. So this camera, and as well as your Phantom 4, tilts, but it doesn't have pan, because if it did, it would be getting in the shots of that. The more advanced ones, like the Inspire we're looking at, the legs actually fold up, and it can do a 360 pan if you wanted to as well. So there's quite a bit of variety between drones in that way.
They've got something set up on this whereby I'll just take the chair, put it up over the chair, hit the button there, fly out so far, hit another button, and the thing will do a radius around.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You can circle. There's a follow me mode, right?
Yeah, there's a follow me mode, but that'll do a circle around anything that
Right.
put it over and establish that point.
Probably the difference between the panning mode is, you can rotate these for sure, and it makes it easier. Some of the more advanced ones, like the Inspire, you can have a two-person operation. So one person's actually flying it, and the other person's operating the camera, so they control exactly where the shot's pointed at, and then you can kind of get more fine control that way, kind of separation of responsibilities. But yeah, these will do pan in that mode too. Transmitting distance, obviously a big thing. Your smaller ones probably have less of a distance, I'm assuming, than some of the bigger ones, right?
Not really. The 2.5 megs will go out of sight.
Okay.
Legally, FAA doesn't want you over 400 feet. With the cameras and the wide angle lens that's on them, you get over 400, you start getting up high, you get the curve, and at 400, it's a speck. Take your eyes off it and you've lost it.
And it's scary at that point too, because the wind's a lot bigger up at those heights.
If I come out of the safe mode on this, I can do 50 miles an hour.
Which is nuts. You think driving a car is like that, get on a drone and try and do that. It's not fun. Well, it is fun, but you know what I mean. Controller viewer. So how do you actually control it? We've got these controllers like this, but there's some difference there. Like you have some sort of, what do you have for a tablet?
That's a Samsung.
So he has a Samsung, I have an iPad mini. Not only does that add cost to it, obviously, but it's yet another thing that you have to charge. Kind of annoying that way sometimes. Some of the other ones actually have built-in screens, definitely helps. Some of the smaller ones that we'll be talking about today, they have a place that you put your smartphone in to use that. Although in some ways that can be scary too, because it's your phone, you're getting emails and other stuff on there. That's the last thing you want when you're trying to fly your drone. So something to consider as well as just the drone itself is how do you control it. The length of the battery, how long it will actually hold the charge and stay aloft. That can change obviously on wind speed and everything else. As well as the max airspeed. Yours goes up to 50, I think mine goes 32.
Yeah, but that's only when I take it out of all the safe
Right.
modes. Other than that, I think top speed in the safe mode is 7 miles an hour.
Yep.
Which is too fast for filming. I don't go.
Right, unless
I
you're
don't go
chasing
that fast
cars.
to film.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the only real difference probably for that is if you're not chasing cars, is if you're trying to get it aloft and you've got a 10-mile-an-hour headwind that you're trying to fly into, you need to cancel that out somehow. So it needs to be at least able to fly fast enough to counteract the wind. Object detection, yours has it, mine does not. And I've flown it into a tree specifically, probably could have avoided it had I had that. Some of the newer ones even have infrared sensors, so it definitely helps. Especially too, because you can tap to fly. I actually have to manually fly my controls to like tell it to go certain places.
Right.
You can just tap it and it will go there safely. Right?
Or do a follow mode.
Yep.
I can tap something and somebody can get on a bike and ride off and it'll just go wherever you are.
I like mine at least has the sensors on the bottom. Mine, the Phantom 3, was a little less advanced, so it'll automatically land, which is kind of the scariest part sometimes about bringing it down is like when it gets close to the ground, you don't want to crash it right at the last second, so that's at least a little bit easier. And then the warranty and support on all of these. Have you ever had to send it back to the mothership?
Nope.
So,
I have not had any problem with manufacturing problems with DJI. As far as I'm concerned, they make the best machine going. A little slack in the customer support division, but
yeah, so they're really well known for their not so great customer service. And I actually have an anecdote because I had to experience it firsthand for the last month. Not this drone, but I also have a DJI Osmo, which is the handheld gimbal stabilized camera. Mine just spontaneously stopped working. I had a lot of students using it over the last year and I really like the product, don't get me wrong, but stopped working. So I went through their automated support, it didn't work, they needed me to ship it back, so I sent it back to DJI. It took them 3 weeks by the time they actually received it to actually work on it, so that involved the down count for that. Said it was gonna be about $90 to repair it. Okay, sent the money, repaired it, sent it back to me. They sent it back, there's a handle in the camera part on the top, separated, so all of the pins and everything else that are supposed to talk to each other were just rolling around, potentially got damaged. It still wasn't fixed when I put it back together. So I emailed them again, hey, still not working. We're so sorry, ship it back, I'll send you a shipping label in the next 2 days. Shipping label never came. It has been a month and a half now and I am still not gotten a repaired Osmo at that point. I'd say, you know, it gets scary when you have to try to ship something back to them. You don't know if it's actually going to be fixed, unfortunately. So as much as the great product as they really have a lot of room for improvement to try to actually get their support where it needs to be. So now is the tech time. I went through the very scientific method. I got my B&H catalog, the new winter one came out. I just opened to the drone section and went, ooh, that looks interesting, and then started to see which ones were the popular ones. So we're gonna peruse the B&H catalog. So this one ended up being really popular on B&H and Amazon. It's the Holy Stone. It's basically kind of the same one as what you've got there, $40. Great way to learn. Maybe the one difference is I assume those, if you let go of the throttle, it's going to just start to come down, right? You're
No,
gonna constantly
no,
provide throttle?
it'll pretty much hover right where,
No,
and it has two modes to it.
okay.
It has a very easy mode to start off with and a more aggressive mode. It's a little more expensive, I forget what it costs, it's like $100, $100.
Oh yeah, it's the C
something like that.
versus the S,
Yeah,
So definitely a good starter drone to learn on. You want to make sure whenever you start flying, this needs to be muscle memory, because when things happen, and things do happen, you want to be able to react to it, not have to think, because if you're thinking, you're already lost the battle at that point. So you want to make sure that you have that. So my next slide is exactly what you have there. This is the Sima X5C quadcopter. You have the X5C-1.
yep.
Same thing, basically. And that's, I think, $50. So
Is it? I don't remember what I paid for it. I just get them.
I saw it on $50 on Amazon, so
Okay, that's probably what I did and where I got it.
$50.
But the big thing with it is it has a 6-axis gimbal in it to stabilize the ship.
Yep,
If you take a regular drone, you take a drone like the racing drone, and you put it up in the air, there is no hover point to it.
Looks
It
like
is
this.
either gonna go forward, backward, left, or right. It does it on its own.
and you're gonna see the shake and everything else. So these are not necessarily, you know, cinema quality looking footage that you're gonna be able to get from the really small ones. This one probably with the stabilizer does a better job than that, I assume.
I really don't use it for that. I use it to fly in, you know, if I wanna fly someplace and it's not a big area to fly, I'll fly that.
Which is great, you know, going back to like this one, you can have these things that come out that will protect the blades in case you do bump it into something. So that's a great way to start. I teach at the high school. We've actually been talking about getting a couple of sets of these so that we can have students starting to learn how to use them. Educationally, we'll talk a lot more about licensing in a little bit. Students don't have to go through that process. They can kind of just get out and fly. There's an exemption for educational use for that sort of stuff. Any questions so far? All right, so then we start getting into the little bit more advanced ones. It increasingly gets DJI products because they are the leaders. I like to throw this Parrot Bebop in here as well because that looked kind of interesting at least. This is a $500 drone, so it has some basic stabilization going on. It's also a nice kind of a smaller drone as well. I'm using drone, sorry, UAV. Don't hold it against me. The Phantom 3, which is mine, is still a valid option. They're still for sale. They don't have the sensors though to do crash avoidance, but for $450, it's not too bad of a product. That will do 1080, but not 4K. And it has the gimbal that you can see up there as well, so that's a pretty interesting product. Of course, it's a bigger one as well. Going kind of downscale, the DJI Spark is incredibly small. It is almost this big when you fold it up. You can literally fit it in your back pocket, come out, I want to fly this thing, fold the arms out, take off, and it has all sorts of interesting modes that it can fly in. It can actually follow people. You can give it hand signals to actually tell it to do certain things. You don't even need a controller is what DJI actually says. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say at least. So that's a product definitely that's interesting that's out there as well. Getting a little bit bigger is the Mavic Pro. So it's starting to get bigger sensors, so it's a little bit more sensitive to light. That's a little bit bigger, it's like water bottle sized. It's still very small though, I'd say it's incredibly portable. The controller for that basically takes a smartphone to fit it in as well. I like to throw in just a little bit of variety here. We have the GoPro Karma, which you've got the handle for right up there. So that actually is kind of cool because you can talk about that.
I picked up the handle for the Karma just to use it with my GoPro. I didn't want to get and the ones on the Maverick, and the ones on the Phantoms work the same way. That'll stay at that position until I push a button down, aim it at the table, come up, now it'll want to stay at the table. So I can position it to shoot whatever I want. But this slides right into the Karma,
So like this part right here.
and that's what you fly with.
Have they fixed the battery issue with the Karma? Because I know they originally had to recall.
I They said they did, I've not heard otherwise, honestly. They were dropping out of the skies, because what would happen is they'd start to vibrate and the batteries would disconnect, and as soon as the batteries disconnect, it's a paperweight. So I think people are a little reticent about it for that reason. The other problem with these two was that if the horizon line, it wouldn't stay level, and the only way you could fix that once it went unlevel is to bring the thing down. You couldn't actually correct it afterwards. You had to bring the drone down, reorient the gimbal, and then you could put it back up. But who wants to do that if you need to get a shot and you're like losing light? So that's kind of a big
Yeah,
thing.
that's just what I did with that, so that's what you have to do with that. So you can't raise the camera up or down.
Yeah, so there's kind of the lack of that. The actual UAV itself is $800, and then if you don't buy the package, it's another $400, $300 for the GoPro, whatever it is you're using, if you're using the 6 Hero Black being the really nice one, or a Hero 3. I think those are the only two that'll work with it. So there's some variety that way.
And that's
pricing on the Spark and the Mavic?
I'm glad I wrote it down. That's what everybody always at the end of the day is curious about. Spark was $500, the Mavic was $800. I mean, that's just kind of like the starting price. You've got one battery, you might need to get extra batteries to go along with it, because you got 20 minutes flight time, you might want more than that. So it starts to add up, you get all the doodads to go with it. You want the shade hood for your controller, that's another 20 bucks. If you wanted, let's say, spotting binoculars, that might be something else you want. The case itself, although your case came with it. Before.
Yeah.
That's a really slick case, I gotta say.
They packaged the floor in a really nice case. It's styrofoam, where everything else that I had came in a box.
The batteries and all of the stuff.
Batteries, everything, just all fits.
Right in there.
All fits right in the case.
Phantom 3 wasn't as nice. This came with a kit that I bought, but you can see how much bigger mine is compared, and it's kind of unwieldy. I mean, it's a little more sturdy, but it's also kind of the same time, a little bit of a pain in the butt. And then you're paying extra money for it as well, so definitely that's a consideration when you're thinking cost about what are the add-ons for it, because you're definitely going to need a few of them more there.
That has 2 batteries in the case, so if you need more than 2, you have to carry them separate in another bag. Not a big thing.
Well, could you have one battery in the thing and then 2 separate?
Yeah, I could have 3 in that. Yeah, I could have one in.
That came out. This is the one I want so badly right now. It's got collision sensors on 3 of the sides, and on the 4th side it has infrared sensors on the front, which means that it's got much, much better resolution, so it wouldn't fly into the tree for sure. And then it's got a sensor on the bottom as well to be able to land safely. So definitely between that and the better flight speed and everything else, it definitely is a much cooler product in terms of that. My Phantom 3 I still like quite a bit though, don't get me wrong. As you get more advanced, we're in the professional line still. The DJI Inspire 2, that was what we were watching from the short film. So this one actually has different kinds of camera mounts you can put on there. This one's cool too because these legs fold up, and it basically means all of the undercarriage has a 360-degree view all the way around. It'll also allow for 2 operators, so one person's on the controller here flying the thing, the other person is operating the camera, so you can split your flight ability. It's sometimes, I don't know about you, but I find it difficult sometimes to think about not only moving in the space to stay safe, but actually getting the shot.
It is. If you're flying something like this, you wear 2 hats. And you have to be aware you have to be a step ahead of the craft. And then you have to think about the creativity of what you're filming. So
yeah,
that is actually a nice way to go. That is very expensive compared to these.
Yeah. So
and you need a partner.
And you also need the extra controller, so it even makes it more expensive at that point too. So it's a starting purchase price of like $3,000 instead of $1,300, but if you can afford it, definitely it's great. But at the same time, that's a $3,000 investment that could drop out of the sky at literally any moment too, so something to keep in mind. And then here's the sky's the limit. The Matrice 200 just came out. They don't even have a price for, I can't tell you it. The 600 is $6,000. This is cinema quality. They have like big rigs. I think it did 23 pounds lifting capacity. 45-minute linger time, it's just crazy amount of stuff that they do.
It's $5,000.
What's that?
$5,000.
Oh, 5,000, okay. I gotta find better sites to purchase stuff on. It's probably with a kit and everything else. This was a super new one that I saw in the B&H catalog, but I cannot find anywhere to buy. Intel, who had done the drones at the Super Bowl, that little cloud thing, if you ever saw it for the halftime show, also just released this. So this is a octocopter that actually is gimbal stabilized, and you just slap a DSLR in there. I can't imagine that's less than $2,000 if it's got an Intel label on it. And then I don't know, have you guys done the 360 presentation yet? They actually have a 360 drone that's out there as well. So it's the drone called Janus, which was, I'm gonna say it was insane. It was like $14,000 for the low price of it. So just that there's other cool stuff that's out there. The point out just that this is super expensive now, but think about where we were 5 years ago. It was all hobbyist stuff, you had to build it, it was super expensive. So the fact that this exists now means maybe in another 5 years, it'll be on the realm of $1,000 and everyone will be able to fly it. So just to see something that's around, that's there. All right, so that's the gear part. I love toys, definitely they're fun. So drones have been in the news a lot. We actually, in our Falmouth area, had a story just recently. So a bunch of Australian filmmakers were flying their UAV out and around Surf Dry Beach, lost control of it, and it crashed into a guy's house, broke his window, went into the bedroom. Not the greatest story, obviously, but it definitely shows you that it's in the forefront. If I'm guessing that they're from Australia, they did not have their license and they were not flying legally. This guy ended up holding the drone hostage and the footage hostage until they paid for his window. They didn't have enough money on them for that spot, so they had to come back the next day to do that. Not great PR, obviously, if you're crashing into people's houses. I'm also going to guess probably that they didn't keep the drone in line of sight, or at least if they lost control of it. Other stuff that's happened, there was a civilian drone on September 24th, so not long ago. They were in the airspace of a helicopter, crashed into it, forced an emergency landing of the helicopter. So it caused damage to the blades. Very, very scary stuff, especially when drones are flying in the same airspace potentially as helicopters. My sense would probably be, I think it was flying 500 feet. They were not flying legally. We're supposed to stay under 400 feet. So that should have never happened in the first place if they knew what they were doing. Or hopefully what you guys leave here with today is you'll know that was a big no-no on their part. And then, this was a little while ago, there was another drone, this was overseas. They crashed, it actually took out an athlete and injured them when they were running in this triathlon. You can find a lot of these stories for sure. These were just the kind of the quick glance stories that I have there. So it's very important for us to learn how to fly safely, and a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, they violated those rules, this was the end result, and there's going to be a world of hurt coming down on those people because they didn't do what they were supposed to be.
In any of those cases, have you heard why it crashed? Was it operator error or was it mechanical?
This was definitely operator error. They got in the middle of the flight path of a helicopter at 500 feet.
Oh, that would be, yes.
This one, yes, it was also operator error. So in Australia, the rules are if you're around people, you're supposed to fly 30 meters away from people. They were only 10 meters away. Potentially, they came up with a story that said that because it was a cell phone app, that someone had tried to take control of the drone using their phone, which caused them to lose control of the drone, and then it crashed into a tree. But it sounds like user error operator to me, as well as this one, definitely was. It sounded like a line of sight issue. They were too far away, and they lost control. Probably did a return to home and smacked right into their window. So a lot of this stuff can be preventable. Definitely, you know, these things are mechanical devices that can happen as well. But in all of these cases, it seemed like people were doing stuff that they really shouldn't be doing. So, how do you learn how to fly the drone to start out with? You've flown for a long time. Do you remember how you started?
Well, the drone itself, you just have to get out there with me because I was flying the RC stuff to begin with. You just had to get out there and get it up off the ground and work with it. I knew what the controls were. My suggestion, which wouldn't do anybody any harm, is to find a local RC club, join the club. If you're flying Spectrum or Petaba transmitters, you can have a check pilot fly with you, and if you make a mistake and you're gonna crash, he can let a button go and take over and save whatever it is you're flying. Not gonna be able to do it with the Phantoms, but at least you're not gonna lose your aircraft. The other thing is to join the AMA, because if you're flying by the rules and you have a problem, you have insurance through the AMA, and no club will allow you to join them without having an AMA membership, and that's only $75 a year, so it's not expensive.
What does that stand for?
What's AMA? Yeah.
AMA, Academy of Model Aeronautics,
For 75 bucks, that's cheap.
$75 for,
Yeah.
for a year.
For training and insurance, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't beat that.
No.
What our Model AMA group does a lot too is, especially in the wintertime, it's a little windy out, we fly indoors. They actually come to our high school, we have a big field house, and they fly indoors, which is probably the best way to learn in a lot of ways. You don't have the gusts and drafts and everything else, so you get to learn more about what it's like in stable conditions before you try to take it out in windy conditions.
We do the same thing in Plymouth at DCIS.
Yeah,
We have winter flies in the gym.
it's a great way to do it for sure. It's a whole other beast once you get outside. You got a crosswind you got to think about. You have to think about not having a landing zone that's smooth and flat. We had to practice takeoffs and landings from handheld stuff, which is scary sometimes too. So like definitely flying indoors to start out is a great way to do it. So I'd say, yeah, talk to your AMA to start out with. I like to, and I don't know if you do it, I kind of like to make sure I have a pre-flight checklist. This literally lives in my case every single time. So I go through all of my steps. Every pilot for a regular plane has one of these. I found one online that was really good. It does the same thing. So make sure my gimbal clamp's off. I've got an SD card, batteries charged, all of that stuff. It's all about trying to fly safely. It's important to have that. So I make sure I have this. I keep it laminated in my case. Definitely a good idea. There's a ton of them that are online you can find to be able to take care of that as well. Also, when you're going outside, is it actually conducive to flying your drone out? So it can be a big problem if it's too windy or you've got precipitation. So there's these things like the UAV forecast. We have a little bit of time, we could probably do that. So you can actually go and you can check out whether or not it's safe to fly. So you know how fast your drone can fly, how high you're going to go. You basically just plug in the stuff. I think this is where we are, 350 Quaker Meeting House. So let's say we can fly 15 miles an hour right now. I don't know, let's say we were gonna fly yours and we were gonna be able to do 25. So you can look at it and it shows you right now. Here's the time, 9:10, 11:20. Good to fly, yes. Looks like we may have a chance of precipitation. Anything that's red basically means it's not good. I love this website. It's very easy to find out if it's safe or not to fly based on that. If we knew we were going to be going up to 300 feet, then we could probably go and say that, and then you could say if it was safe to fly up to 300 feet as well. So definitely kind of a helpful resource to be able to use that.
What website is this?
UAVforecast.com.
The other thing with the Phantoms, they are white. The clouds are white. They blend very well.
Yeah, luckily they light up, but that only works for so far.
Yeah.
The FAA recommends, especially if you're flying at dusk or things like that, you have to actually provide supplemental lighting as well that's brighter for that reason.
And if you painted them, would it do anything to the stabilization?
It's a good
I
question.
don't think it would bother the stabilization, because once you start it up, initiate it with the battery, it's going to stable with whatever's there. It changed the smoothness of the air flowing over it. I wouldn't paint the props at all.
Or the vents, yeah.
You know, I wouldn't paint over the vents, but there again, you're gonna have to find out where the antennas are in the bird so that you don't restrict the receive capability.
You got a question?
I just wanted to mention the B&H booth yesterday, they had an orange one on display.
Yeah, so I've seen too, you can buy the shells, so this actually will separate out. You can take the prop blades off, unscrew this, and you know, the guts are still underneath of it, and you can just put the new one on. I've seen those, they have kits that you can do it instead of having to paint, that they have those. It might look a little Frankenstein at the end of the day, but it's more functional than aesthetics. At that point, who cares, right? So, we were talking a little bit about it before, amateur versus professional, before we had started today, about what that entails, because there's very different rules the FAA has about those. So fly for fun versus flying for work, and work can be a lot of different things, right, Tom?
Work can be anything that you receive compensation for, whether it's in kind or cash or a check, or somebody's going to change the oil in your car for 2 years. That's still, you're receiving something. You should be licensed for it. When they first started, the FAA said everybody had to have a tail number. All regular aircraft have a tail number, and they said that the UAVs had to have a tail number, cost you $5. If you did it within a certain amount of time, they sent back the $5. Everybody ran out, got tail numbers. The court told the FAA they had no right to do that, so that ended the tail numbers. Now they're turning around and saying you need a 107. And the book is probably about that thick. There's a lot of questions in that book. I'm waiting myself to see if a court overrules it. Somebody's going to take it to court, and I'm waiting to see if it overrules it. It costs you $150 to take the test.
And that's non-commercial?
That's to do commercial.
That's
Yeah.
the commercial?
That's to do commercial. If you're just doing scenery and whatnot for yourself, there's nothing. You just go buy one and go do it. If you're doing commercial, you need the 107, and I'm waiting, somebody's gonna take FAA to court over it, and they could rule that you can't do that. I do hold a private pilot's license, so it's probably easier for me to take that test than most people, but I'm holding out. I'm waiting to see what happens, because they're not gonna refund your $150.
Question over here.
Yeah, I have a question about the license. So if we're a PEG Access Center that bought a drone,
Right.
do we have to be individually licensed because we're not, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
because you're on the payroll, you're going out and you're getting paid and you're flying, even though it's, you know, regular work day, you're being paid to fly, which,
Sorry.
in that point, I mean, to me, it shouldn't be. You know, you're flying for work, you're not, but that's the FAA.
Wait, because also too, because we're finding it's been very expensive. We bought the original, the DJI 2, and it's not working. We told that it's not supported anymore because
Right.
no longer can we see the footage. It'll do everything else, but we can't see what we're recording. And they said we just don't support it anymore. I'm like, okay.
Have you crashed it at all?
No.
Okay, so then it's probably something on the flight board that isn't allowing it to pass
Right.
through. There is one thing that I do want to bring up that's very dangerous with all RC planes, or all RC models. The batteries that are in them are what they call LiPo batteries. A LiPo battery is a soft battery, and it's layers of the battery material and an insulator. Charging them can be dangerous. If they overheat, they'll catch on fire. People have had their house burned. We had a guy at the field that crashed his plane, took it, threw everything in the back of the truck, and a half hour later his truck was on fire. They do not need oxygen to burn. You can lock them in a ammo can that is totally sealed, and it will burn.
Melt right through it.
Yep. So,
They hold a lot of electricity, so it's gotta go somewhere if it fails, so.
They swell too.
they
Right.
swell. Once one starts to get fat and you can squish it, throw it away. It's not worth having because I've got, where's my little, carries. They fly the little yellow plane, but there are other ones that are bigger. And I mean, these things will burn
Yeah, very quickly and easily.
very, very fast.
It's funny, that's actually one of the sample test questions
Pass
that
them
I
around.
have from the
A
Department.
lot of the batteries that I have are like this. They're big like that, and that thick. They're 2200, 2300 milliamps at 11, 12 volts. Those are small milliamps at 7 volts. But if they get squishy, chuck them.
Yep.
I keep my my batteries in a metal, an old-fashioned metal toolbox. If I charge them in the house, I charge them on top of the ceramic stove.
Don't keep them around flammable things, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you dispose of them?
How do you dispose of them?
Could you repeat the question?
Recycle, yeah,
Recycle them. We have a,
town recycling.
at the club, we have a dryer, a washer drum out of a commercial washing machine. And we start a fire in it, and we fly all year long, so we start a fire in it to stay warm in the wintertime, and we just throw the batteries in it and burn them, and boy, do they burn.
All right.
Yes?
Yeah.
Access people are built around questioning authority and looking for other ways to do things.
Right.
Could we make the case that although we're on the staff of an access center, today we're flying this for fun?
Potentially, but I mean, there's no FAA police out there that's gonna go and arrest anyone, right? At the end of the day, it's all kind of self-policed. If you get into an incident, they will investigate. If they find you're doing it for them, they will make an example of you right now, because this is pretty cutting edge, and that's the last thing you want to do, right? Because you want to avoid that, so keep that in mind, I guess. They know people are gonna do that, for sure, but if they can say that they're gonna do it, your name's gonna be in the news and it's not gonna be good, so something to keep in mind. Yeah,
To save some money too, if you're working partners with your town, they can apply for a COA.
right, so the towns can, they can do
We came under
different
the-
sorts of things.
Emergency management team.
Right.
We fly for the cable station is covered.
Okay, I didn't know if it would be or not, because we
Yeah,
had talked to
they're-
our town and they said the operational thing might not necessarily be.
Yeah, they put it in, so we had,
Flight thing.
it kind of held up in the FAA for a little while.
Yeah.
It took longer to get our COA because they weren't sure what to do.
Right,
But we
so
did have-
town agencies can get the Part 107 waiver, basically that says they can operate.
No, just it took the FAA a little bit longer to get back to us if we
Yeah.
were approved or not.
So we're running a little bit out of time, so I just gotta go a little faster now. So, fly for fun, there's really no pilot requirements, you can be really any age. Flying for work, you need to have the remote pilot airman certificate, we'll talk a little bit about how you get that. And then you actually get a TSA background check as well. They do that part of it kind of automatically. Your aircraft requirements, basically, as long as they're safe to fly, for flying for fun is no big deal. Flying for work, it's less than basically half a pound, or sorry, more than half a pound and less than 55 pounds. It's that range that you have to be licensed for. So if it's anything less than half a pound, you don't necessarily need to get your 107 pilot airman license for it. And then if it's more than 55, I don't know why, because at that point, I guess you're flying the Predators.
Yeah.
Then you have a wholly different thing altogether. UAVs, flying for fun, you have to be 5 miles away from an airport. Flying for work, we have to be in Class G airspace. What do both of those mean? Flying for fun, if you know how many airports are actually around, and it's not just the big airports, like we have a helipad in Woods Hole and we have another one there is nowhere where you're not 5 miles away from an airport. So there's like very few places, you're probably in the Midwest, that you can actually technically fly legally that's out there. But honestly, I'm gonna wave my hands, we're not talking about that today. Fly for work, you need to be in Class G airspace. What the heck does that mean? So this is sky, this is ground level, this is the tallest stuff. Class A is where all the big jets fly, okay? So this is the path that they have. All of these other ones here are basically airports. So what they have in terms of when they bring the planes in to circle around, they call this the upside down wedding cake. So bigger ones up at the top, and then as you come down to the airport, it gets closer. Class G airspace is the general airspace that basically exists between all of those, okay? This is right from the FAA website if you ever needed to find it. It's pretty interesting when you see that, because this translates when you're looking at a map like this, these are the major airports that are around here. So in the Falmouth area, we've got the Barnstable one, there's the Air Force Base up there, there's actually one here and a lot of other stuff. But that translates to these. You're familiar with these.
I'm familiar with those.
So these are actually all of the class airspaces right here. So those circles we were looking back here, so there's the airport there. This is the airspace for that, and if you notice, that covers Falmouth. So it's kind of challenging. You know, you've got Boston, we've got Plymouth, it's all sorts of, it's a mess. And reading these things is like an art that I'm still not quite there yet, so I haven't taken my Part 107. They have this app that you can get on your phone. Excuse me, it's called Before You Fly, and it will let you put in your GPS coordinates, and it will give you a good approximation of whether or not it's safe to fly where you are. Not only because of just the airports and things like that, because there are other reasons why you wouldn't necessarily want to bring your drone up. So sensitive airspace restrictions. When President Obama came to Martha's Vineyard, couldn't fly your drone. There was a 20-mile exclusion zone, so that's definitely an important thing. Temporary flight restrictions. Sometimes they have big events that are going on. They'll prevent people from flying there. That also gets into restricted use in special airspace. Not flying in stadiums, things like that. When the Super Bowl, the high school Super Bowl even, they prevented us from flying drones there. Wildfires, any kinds of fires really, where other types of area vehicles will be operating, as well as airports as well. So the Before You Fly app does pull in a lot of these notice to airmen about trying to prevent people from flying in the areas. Sometimes it's not 100% up to date, but it's definitely better instead of having to look for everything else. Okay?
That's another reason to belong to a RC club, because my club puts out NOTAMs as they come in. So I don't have to go check anything. My email pops up and it says I can't fly because the president's going to the vineyard or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's all done by my club, so that's an advantage of belonging to a club.
Not getting federally investigated is probably a good thing, right?
Yes.
All right, more rules. Flying for fun, you want to always yield right of way to regular aircraft. You want to have to keep the aircraft in your sights. That's the case no matter what, if you're flying for work or otherwise. You got to follow any community guidelines, so if there's any town and local ordinances, you've got to do that as well. And then my favorite one, notify air traffic control, because they say you have to do that, except there is no process for you to actually be able to contact air traffic control, and they say explicitly you're not supposed to contact air traffic control. So FAA is countermanding itself right there. Flying for work, same thing. You could fly during the day, plus or minus half an hour from dusk to dawn. You have to fly at or below 100 miles an hour. If you had a drone that flew that fast, more power to you. Keep it in line of sight no matter what. It has to be manned at all times, and you're not supposed to fly over people or from a moving vehicle. The last one I'm not so sure about. I guess it's probably about more orientation. So examples of that, flying for fun, for your own recreational purposes, educational use for students to learn how to, is okay. I guess too, if you're already doing it for your own recreational use, that falls into that category. Basically everything else, like Tom just said, falls into flying for work. So the regulatory basis for this is they have these codified things. I just pulled this right from the site. And then this Part 107 of the FAA is kind of what we want to talk about today, taking the test for that in just a second. Just one last thing, because it's probably important for you guys, accidents. FAA obligates you to report them whether you're doing it for fun or for work. You have to report an accident no less than 10 days before, 10 days after it happens. So that can be anything that seriously injures a person or causes them to be rendered unconscious, or any damage that exceeds $500, not to the drone, to whatever it is you crash it into. So for those guys in Falmouth that crashed through a patio glass window, if that was more than $500, they're supposed to report it to the FAA. Okay? And basically they have a form on their website. You fill it out. It's pretty straightforward. They still ask for the aircraft registration number, although there is the none button there, because you're not specifically required to anymore. You have to go through that process. Anything you want to add about that?
No, covered that pretty good.
Thank goodness we don't ever had to do that. So to go ahead, if you're going to be flying for work, you potentially need to get certified as unmanned airmen, basically. So you have to take this Part 107 flight exam. You have to be 16 years old, you have to take an aeronautical knowledge test, and they have two separate tracks, one for first-time pilots, and other ones for these guys who already flown other devices before, because a lot of the knowledge is similar, and then there's some stuff that's really specific to drones as well. So what does that mean? You get to contact a test center. I'm going to show you which ones you have in your areas in just a minute. You fill out a form. You can do it online, or you can just have the paper one you bring to the test center. It's $150 to take the test, as well as them to do the background check. It takes about 2 hours. They give you 2 hours to do. It'll take probably less time than that. It's an 80-question test. They have a test bank. They have a book to go along with it. It's a thick book, and there's some stuff that you have to do to be able to get ready for it. You need to get a 70% better to be able to pass the test. And then once you pass, they'll give you a temporary ID. You get a permanent one a little bit later on, which is valid for 2 years. I'll be sharing this stuff through whatever group is as well, so if you don't have to take copious notes, you have that. So these are testing sites. Anyone from Connecticut? All right, so these are the locations if you were in Connecticut. Maine and Vermont have a couple. I've stuck Vermont in even though we're not alphabetical because of that. Massachusetts, the closest one to us is actually in Plymouth. There's one in Bedford as well. Basically, these are all done through model aeronautics clubs for the most part. There's some small airfield as well, so that are out there. New Hampshire, here's New York. New York gets two whole pages. I figured I'd put all of Northeast in here, seeing how it is the ACM conference. Okay, so what do they cover in the material? I pulled this straight from the website. So basically, stuff that applies to you guys operating your model aircraft, UAVs, in the airspace. We can look at some sample questions in just a second. How to operate that safely in the airspace that you're flying, to know whether or not you're going to be flying into an airport and potentially crashing it into a plane. How to read weather sources and forecasts. Honestly, the UAV forecast will do most of this stuff, but the FAA puts out weather reports, so how to read those, because they are written in some sort of other language that's been going back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Small unmanned aircraft loading and performance. It's an interesting topic. Some of this stuff will make you go, what the heck? Why am I possibly being asked this information? Some of it I feel like is knowledge, like they just want you to have more of an appreciation about what it is to fly as a pilot in general. Some of this stuff is more specifically about drones, but some of this stuff is like the history and the culture. Knowing what the NATO alphabet is, so you're gonna have to know Alpha Bravo, Charlie Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf Hotel, just all the way through to Z, that sort of stuff. Knowing that all through. Knowing what happens if you have emergency procedures. Knowing crew resource management, so how you can possibly delegate tasks. How to communicate over radios, because you're going to be doing that. Determining the performance of your craft, psychological effects of drugs and alcohol. Don't drive drunk, even if it's a drone. Making a judgment, aircraft operations will be the least likely thing you'll probably need to do, as well as maintenance of pre-flight. Just follow your sheet. So here's some quick test questions. The bank is usually 3 questions. It's not 4, just 3. There's going to be one glaringly obvious wrong answer on that. And then between the 2, you can usually pick between the 2. So for this, what technique should a remote pilot scan for traffic? You can probably eliminate something, concentrate on relative movement in peripheral area. You're focusing on short intervals for different spots. You're trying to circle around, trying to find that. So that might be one question. Here's one of my favorite questions, because this is a terrible question for the exact reason that you need to know specific knowledge from the book, but the book and information is completely wrong, but tell the book answer anyway. So when you understand, so to know what the center of gravity is not exceeded for the aircraft, they want you to know that it is in fact in the Aeronautical Information Manual, I'm pretty sure. Do you know that one? Am I right?
Weight and balance of the aircraft.
Yeah. Which, it doesn't exist. There's no manual for this drone. You try to look it up in the specs, it doesn't actually exist. But they want you to know the magical answer is in fact that.
In a real aircraft, and all fixed, any aircraft, they have a center of gravity. At that point, you can hold it and it stays totally flat. If you load a regular airplane with too much in the back, it's going to be tail heavy. Vice versa in the nose, it's gonna be nose heavy. You put X number of pounds in it, and the plane is only allowed to carry 1,500 pounds, and you put 2,000 in it, it may never get off the ground. But that is an airplane that you get in. Commercial airlines have to do it all the time for the baggage that goes in and all the passengers. We don't have a weight and balance chart for these. Yeah, it doesn't come with it. There does not one that exists.
But they want you to know that it does exist even though it doesn't, so. You just gotta know this, the dumb answer at that point. You read the book and you spell out the answer. And then there is kind of interesting stuff that's there. It might be more of an appreciation if you were an actual pilot, like if you flew a Cessna or something like that. So they have a map, there's an airport, you're gonna know what frequency you need to call in on the radio. You would read it from the map and you would know which of the answers after referring to the figure. Might not necessarily be something that you do in terms of flying the drone, but they want you to have an appreciation for it when you're taking the test, to be kind of more appreciative of what it would be that you do it. You wouldn't be flying around an airport even if you had a radio, right? They want to keep you at least a few miles away from the airport so you don't crash into things.
I think they want to deter you from getting a license.
Probably. Make that bar this high. So once you get the waiver, the certification, you can fly for up to 2 years. That's good. There are certain things that you can actually apply to the FAA to get a waiver for afterwards. So these things, if you want to fly at night or do any of this other stuff, you can actually apply to the FAA, have them say, yes, you in fact can do that. You usually have to have very specific circumstances. The biggest one that I saw was for model aeronautics groups that flew around major airports. They basically said, hey, I want to fly my drone around my sports stadium to get footage that way. I need to get the exemption that I need to fly in Class B airspace because they were near an airport, and I need to fly over people. But they got that exemption, and the FAA does grant those through a tedious process.
Is that per incident?
You can get a blanket waiver for, I think, up to 6 months. So potentially you could do it for that. The problem is it's a lot of lead time. So let's say I wanted next week to be able to fly my football stadium, and it's in Class B airspace because there's an airport nearby. There's no way I'm going to be able to get that. So you almost have to preemptively decide you're going to do these things and just have it ready and waiting. And you have to be very specific about where it is you're going to be when you contact them. This literally came up yesterday. I got this email. FAA is changing its rules again. They frequently do that. Back on my first slide, I probably should have pointed out I'm not a flight lawyer. Tom's not either. So we're not completely experts, and the laws are changing all the time, so take whatever you have with a little bit of a grain of salt. But these rules are changing a little bit. They're going to be, the FAA is going to be working with local state and government agencies to do a private-public partnership so that potentially people could be flying without having to follow so many of these rules. There's actually a webinar at 3 o'clock I'm going to be listening in on to find out what the heck this actually means. So there's stuff down the pipe that is coming out. Not exactly sure what that means precisely, but we'll wait and see. Come back next year when we do one of these things and maybe I'll have an answer. AMA, we kind of talked about already. Join the local group. So this is what entitles you to for insurance. So $2.5 million comprehensive liability, $25,000 in accident medical, $10,000 accidental death. You get a $1,000 fire, theft, and vandalism, which won't quite cover this, but definitely helps. Doesn't cover accidents specifically, though, right? Like if you crash your drone.
No, if you crash it into a tree or the ground or whatever.
That's on you.
That's on you.
DJI does offer a complete care insurance, which is something you can buy when you get it. I don't know about the other UAVs, but it's kind of, it will cover up to a certain point. Pete, you had something?
Is that per person membership, or can you do it like a group membership?
Can you do
No,
an organization?
I don't know about, well, no, it's per person. Our club belongs to AMA, but each one of us in the club have to belong to it. So it's not a group thing.
But for $75 or whatever
And
it is
the club insurance only kicks in at the field. This, for you, would kick in wherever you were flying. Hope nobody comes through that wall.
Kool-Aid man ready to come in.
Yeah.
So covered a lot of information, just to overload you guys completely now, with ethics and everything else, because, you know, there's been a lot of pushback recently. I mean, you see news stories like that, and the public in general kind of, I think, is a little bit wary about UAVs and drones, like they call them, in general, because, you know, they don't want to be like having someone spying on them in their backyard, right? The thing is, you don't own the airspace over your house technically. That's common use, right? I mean, it's Class G airspace. Does that mean you should go and fly over somebody's house, though? Probably not, right? You want to at least contact them, whoever it is you're flying over, to get their permission to do that. But now you're flying over their house, but you're 50 feet up, and you can see into the next door neighbor's yard, and you can see them as well. What happens then? There's no good answer for it, really. I mean, there's just a lot of there's a lot of ethical considerations to keep in mind when you're doing that. You know, somebody who might have something they want to keep private at 100 feet up, I can see from a long ways away. So it's kind of a challenge trying to be able to maintain privacy rights and potentially follow ethical or local ordinances as well. A great example of that is they were trying to do a beach ordinance in Falmouth. It was more about umbrellas and all sorts of stuff in terms of radios, but somebody snuck a drone ordinance along with all of these other things. They were going to ban all of the drones from public beaches, which, okay, I don't want to have a drone, you know, if everybody's in swimsuits flying over grabbing video of people while they're in bikinis or whatever else. I completely understand that, but all of a sudden the local government starting to insert itself into if you can fly a drone or not. What does that mean necessarily? Or is it going to be coming in for other things as well? What is and what isn't acceptable at a local level? You don't want to be breaking any laws if you didn't know that they existed because you went to a different location and they had something on the books you didn't know about. And also just staying safe in a general sense. Definitely making sure, you know, everybody's first instinct is when they're flying these things, because they are super awesome, is to start having fun, but you got to be very careful because it's very easy to lose control of these and they can become dangerous very, very quickly. Knowing what you're proficient at and how you can stay safe is a very, very important thing. Anything you want to add to that?
The one thing is, always remember your last maneuver in the plane, or UAV, whatever it is you're flying. If you're flying out straight and you make a left, remember that you made a left.
Yeah.
So that if you get into a situation, a couple more lefts will get you aimed at you. And you can see that on your screen. Understand the area that you're in so that you can return to home yourself, so that you can see where you are. Silver Lake in my town and a couple of other towns, it covers a couple of towns. A year ago when we had the big drought, I mean, that lake was down 200, 250 feet from the shoreline, from the normal shoreline. So I went out and I did some photographs on it, and I tried to get, so normally I'm not over 100 feet when I fly. Very rarely 150, but I tried to get some big shot of the lake, and I got up to about 400 feet, and the DJI app does not give you altitude. I also use a third-party app that keeps talking to me, telling me how far away I am, how much battery time I have, and my altitude. And you know, she just keeps talking, and I don't have to pay attention to that. Just listen and watch what I'm doing. And I was up into, not into the clouds, but it mixed with the clouds, and at that point, it's only about that big. And I'm looking, okay, and I took my eyes off it, and I went back, and I can't find it. Well, the cloud moved. The drone didn't. So remember your last maneuver so that you can come back with it.
It's scary when those things happen.
Yeah.
It's so easy to lose in the sun too.
What's the name of that third-party app that you use?
You know, I don't remember, but I will.
I want that.
Oh, it's over here.
Because it's tough. You're like paying attention not only to up there, you're paying attention to your screen, you're paying attention to what the camera's pointing at, your distance, the map for that, and you got to keep all of that in your head all at the same time.
This app does cost $4. You have to.
Versus $1,000 drone you might lose potentially. Right. I think that's a good investment. Yeah, definitely something to have there. So Tom and I were talking about this before we had started. What does this look like for a local cable access channel? He came up with a second idea, which I thought was great too, is one is, yeah, it's a teaching moment. Definitely, if you're teaching other people, like students or whatever else, to do it, you fall under the educational use. You don't have to worry about your Part 107. But for going out and taking one of these and going and getting footage from that, typically I think you're looking at one or just a few people in your access center. As operators, they have to probably get licensed. Whoever's doing it, if it's one person, I'd still say logging all of this stuff. If it's more than one person, definitely logging that, because the next person behind them, they really should know what happened with it, especially if you had the hard landing and there might be potentially something wrong with it as well. Just also a good idea in terms of keeping the flight log to know how it's performing and everything like that. And then budget for repairs. These things will eventually have problems no matter what. I've gone through 7 sets of prop blades now. The most common problem that I've run into is a big gust of wind comes and takes the drone as soon as I'm taking off. So it's literally just this far on the ground, ready to take off. Gust of wind came under it and it flips it upside down, and then prop blades go flying everywhere. It's not catastrophic to the drone, but these are $20 a pop when you have to replace prop blades. So just keep that in mind. If it ever has to go back to the mothership, it can get very expensive very quickly.
I have a quick fix for you.
What's that?
When you go to take off, hit the throttle and get up to 10 feet.
Oh,
Right off the bat, just go to 10 feet.
I'm doing auto takeoff, which I've done less and less of for that reason.
I've done auto takeoff and I don't like it. I've done auto landing and I don't like it, because it does the same thing. You come down to 3
It
feet
settles in,
and
yeah.
then it settles down. The controls are easy enough once you get used to them that you can bring it down and land it so that it just barely touches. This is a new
Well, Tom's
tablet
looking.
that I just got, so I don't think I put that one on here.
Oh, it doesn't have that one in?
I don't think, I've got to go download it.
All
I
right,
don't see
just
it.
sync it up. Any questions? We've got a few more minutes left before lunch. Yes?
To what extent,
Job
if any, can flying a drone by GPS coordinates substitute for skill in handling the aircraft?
I mean, at the end of the day, could you? Yeah, definitely, but that's in ideal situations, and we don't fly necessarily in ideal conditions all the time. You absolutely need to be able to take over the drone at a moment's notice, or else potentially you're losing it. Whether that's into someone or something that's going to get damaged or whatever else. I do like to fly with GPS coordinates on occasion, especially if you're trying to set up a shot. It's great to have that there so you can compose your shot and know reliably every single time it's going to go from here to here. It's great to have that because you can think less about actually having to compose your shot at that point. But as a reliable way of flying it all the time, definitely not.
Does it help with the point that you were addressing before, which is that at least during those moments, it's flying and then I can concentrate on the camera view?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say for the more advanced ones like the Phantom 4,
I do have it on there.
which one is it? Wish I could put it on that screen. What was the name of it? HG?
Yeah,
How do you spell that?
All you do is plug it in.
Could you spell that? What is that?
Litchi.
I gotta put my glasses on. See, that's an app that's on the App Store, Play Store, or Apple.
Question way in the back.
I was wondering if you know you get your certification in Massachusetts, does that extend to other states?
It's federal, so yeah, it's all
It's
states.
just a general certification?
Yes, it's FAA. Yep.
Generally, we tried to shoot through a covered bridge, and it got halfway and lost its mind.
Right.
So is it really meant to be up in the sky, flying around, or can you really be flying along the river, go through the covered bridge, go up in the sky, or is that really meant for that? I mean,
That-
drone racing, I can see it doing.
Right.
The only thing that you lost was the GPS connection. Your transmitter and UAV were still in communication. So at that point, you did not have the stabilization of the GPS. You could still fly it through manually, and then it will reconnect up on the other side with the
Is that
GPS.
Is it generally better in the city as opposed to the country, or is that signal supposed to be the same throughout? the
It's
country?
all line of sight, so it varies. City's probably worse, depending on If you've ever like done a map GPS with your phone, like sometimes you know how it drops out, same difference basically. Where it doesn't need any GPS signal at all, and it, from knowing the location of all this stuff, could potentially fly if you have more advanced drone that way.
Well, if you take this, there's 3 modes on the transmitter, the little button.
Yeah.
So you pull it out of your GPS mode
Yeah.
into aggressive flight, you can fly it indoors because there's no GPS signal.
Right, yeah, and it doesn't care about it.
Although I wouldn't want to fly it indoors. But once these lock into a position, you fly it someplace and leave it, it'll stay there until the battery runs out. You can put your transmitter down and walk away, and it'll stay 50 feet away, 20 feet in the air, and come back and land almost where it took off.
Except
Not
you want to make
exactly.
sure you get your return to home height high enough so it doesn't go over any trees.
Right. So basically, your return to home height is 65 feet. And if you have a 75-foot pine tree, and don't have the sensor, you're gonna go right into the pine tree. And maybe even that, where the pine tree isn't solid, that might go into it too. So,
I know
yes.
that membership group offers insurance, but have any of municipalities made you guys get extra insurance through the municipal insurance carrier?
PAC TV turned around and took out insurance on me. They took out extra drone, because that's what it's labeled, drone insurance. They took out extra insurance on me, so I am insured through the company as well.
There's a couple of other insurance companies that will even do spot coverage. Like you can have a PO set up with that. You can actually say, I'm flying on this such and such date, and they'll do micro transactions to cover you specifically with those. Our school did some research and said we were covered under our general insurance for liability and stuff for public schools. I don't know what it'd be like for a regular access center though.
Pembroke schools wanted some footage taken of all of their schools, which I'll be going out and doing Wednesday. And I said to the people, I said, okay, go to the police department and get permission. Get a letter saying that we can fly at the schools, because nowadays you have a police officer at every school. So all I need to do is show up in the parking lot and okay, fella, put that thing down. I don't need that.
I have a question in the back.
One in the back. Yeah, way in the back there.
Do you have any recommendations for dealing with local airports? I know in our community, our airport's basically centered in the town, and anywhere we would go in the town is within that.
I have a rule of my own. If I'm within a 5-mile limit of an airport and I'm below the trees, if that plane's gonna hit me, or I'm gonna hit it, it's in trouble anyway. So,
I suppose if you're higher than that, you know, your AMA has been flying there a lot longer. They probably already have those inroads with the airport. It might be another way to approach it too.
one of the things for flying, I was going through the Boston airspace, and the ground control called me and asked me what I had on my right side. I looked out of the airplane and I had a flock of starlings. He saw those on radar. That's not metal, but he knew what it was. He was just confirming it with me, that there was a flock of starlings up there. So, radar detects a lot more than just metal for the planes.
Right. My brother-in-law, actually, he works for NASA, and they're working to try to integrate these into airspace, like actually having transmitters so it will show up for flight ops, which I thought was kind of interesting, but that's a long ways down according to him.
Yeah, I would think so.
But for search and rescue and stuff, that would be great.
There would be, some police departments are using these to send out to an accident and drop a UAV, a defib.
Yeah.
At the scene of the accident to be used before the medics get there.
Yeah, because first responders, every minute counts. That is so much faster. I think we have another question in that.
We have one over here.
I know we're almost at noon right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you guys up for lunch.
Someone else had a question? Okay, way in the back behind. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, we've been talking about user ethics and what are the public rights in terms of responses to the future in which drones are flying all over the place. It's like, I had a situation, I was in a hotel in Georgia on the coast, and a drone came, I was 3 floors up, and a drone came and was hovering right outside my window.
Right.
Do I have any rights in terms of shooting that down? Not that I, you know what I'm
Right.
saying. But like,
Yeah,
if I had a gun, I was thinking like, yeah, boom, you're done.
Right.
It's sort of, does the public have direct recourse to being invaded?
Right now, I think the laws are still trying to catch up with this technology, honestly. I mean, there could be local ordinances, but according to law right now, it's FAA airspace and anyone can operate in it, right?
Expectation of privacy, he's got it right there.
Right.
I'm a lawyer, and I've looked at these issues a lot, and
Okay, you probably know better than I
it's
do.
in flux, and right now what applies is general law, general law and privacy. And so it's not fitted to the drones, but to the extent that any legal actions are brought, whatever the law is, not for drones, that you gotta kind of squeeze in.
Mhm.
At some point, you're gonna develop some laws for drones, but right now, there really isn't anything special, so.
Okay, but
You
still
have
you
the
shouldn't be
general
spying on
trespass
people in
laws.
you shouldn't be spying on people in a hotel no matter what, if you're using a drone or otherwise.
Isn't there a specific FAA rule about not flying over people?
Right.
Yes.
That's
Can't
for
fly over
safety.
crowds.
So
Yeah.
flying over your beach with your, you can't do that
Crowd
anyway.
of people on the
But-
beach, no.
But if you were, at the water and not
Yeah,
directly
okay,
over them and still
okay.
flying, technically that's okay by them, but it's still
I don't know
pretty-
what the situation is out here at the beach, but after lunch, anybody care to join me, I'm gonna fly it. If you want a demonstration, come on down to the beach after lunch,
Yeah.
wherever it is, someplace behind the building.
Yeah. If anyone has any one-on-one questions you want to ask us, please feel free. I don't want to hold you up for lunch at all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good job.